Here are 10 terrifying tales of possessed children. Number 10 is Gina. On April 4th, 1991, the television network ABC aired a special episode of their news program 2020, in which they broadcasted something the host Barbara Walters said was, up to that point, never seen on American television. It was the real-life exorcism of a young girl, referred to only as Gina, the 16-year-old Florida native who was the daughter of a Colombian immigrant, was possessed by a large number of demonic spirits, and the Vatican approved of the evil being vanquished. Reverend James Labar, who was no stranger to overseeing exorcisms, led the charge against the evil forces inside Gina, while the girl screamed at the top of her lungs and barked at everyone in the room. The exorcism took over 6 hours and in the end seemed to bring Gina peace. Number 9 is Clara Germana Salé. If you're looking to get cursed, then making a pact with the devil himself is a pretty clear way to do it. In 1906, when she was just 16 years old, Clara Germana Salé made such a pact, and wound up possessed for her trouble. A student at St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa, the teen began exhibiting unnatural impulses, which frightened those around her. She then began showing signs that she'd become clairvoyant, revealing deep personal secrets of those close to her, and then began walking up the walls. Soon after, Salé began conversing in languages that she had never heard before. Clearly possessed, her exorcism was witnessed by 170 people. During it, she launched Bibles from their places on shelves and made animal noises. The exorcism worked, but not before Salé showed that she could levitate. Number 8 is Danielle. Raised as a member of the Evangelical Church in Winnipeg, Manitoba, a teenager known only as Danielle found herself having doubts about her faith in 2011. She began researching demonology and Satanism and claimed to her friends that she'd been using a Ouija board in an attempt to summon a demon. Unfortunately, Danielle may have gotten exactly what she asked for. After the Ouija board told her that she wasn't alone in her room, she began having headaches and spasms, and kept hearing a hissing sound. Turning back to her church, Danielle was brought in for an exorcism, where not one but 3 demons took up residence in the young woman. The exorcism sent away at least one of the demons, but Danielle fears the other 2 are laying dormant, waiting for the perfect moment to arise. Number 7 is Ronald Edwin Hunkler. In January of 1949, after losing his Aunt Harriet to multiple sclerosis, 13-year-old Ronald Edwin Hunkler turned to his Ouija board in an attempt to contact her spirit. It's unclear if he managed to reach her, but what is known is that he began experiencing strange occurrences immediately after. Scratching sounds coming from the floor and walls haunted him while he was in bed. Strange scratches appeared on his body, and his mattress would suddenly move on its own. Ronald was possessed by as many as 10 demons, so an exorcism was requested. The young teen attacked and injured the priest during the first attempt, but a second, more intense exorcism managed to vanquish the evil inside of him. Ronald's ordeal was terrifying, which is why it became the inspiration for the film The Exorcist. Number 6 is Anna Eklund. Referred to as the Earling Possession due to it taking place in Earling, Iowa, this incident took place over decades, but started when the victim was only a teenager. Emma Schmidt, better known by her pseudonym Anna Eklund, began showing signs that she'd been possessed by a demonic presence when she was just 14 years old. She became agitated around holy symbols and was unable to even enter a church. It's believed that Eklund's aunt, a witch, was the cause and the source of the possession taking place. Anna's first exorcism took place on June 18, 1912, and she continued to receive regular exorcisms right up until December 23, 1928, when she was 46 years old. Her case is widely considered to be the most documented out of any demonic possession in history. Number 5 is Elizabeth Knapp. On October 30th, 1671, Samuel Willard, a well-known and respected reverend living in Groton, Massachusetts, began documenting the ever-worsening signs that his servant was possessed by a demonic entity. The servant, a 16-year-old girl named Elizabeth Knapp, first complained about having pains spring up all over her body and often flew into highly emotional tantrums, sometimes laughing hysterically for no reason, while other times crying and wailing over nothing apparent. Soon after, she began seeing a man floating around her bed and having full body fits in which it would take multiple people just to hold her down. Knapp began speaking in a deep voice and confessed to making a pact with the devil. Willard's journal ends with him saying Knapp needs the help of more qualified individuals. Number 4 is Christy Bemeux. On December 25th, 2010, Christmas Day, 15-year-old Christy Bemeux was ruthlessly beaten and ultimately killed by her sister, 29-year-old Magali Bemeux, and her boyfriend, 28-year-old Eric Bakubi, inside their Newham, East London home. The couple suspected that Christy was possessed by something evil due to feelings they kept having and wished to exorcise whatever it was from the teen's body. They tortured him with knives, metal pieces, sticks, a hammer, and a chisel until Christy couldn't take it anymore and pleaded for death. After torturing the poor boy, Magali and Eric attempted to perform a ritual cleansing in the couple's bathtub, where, unfortunately, Christy drowned. The pair were arrested and charged with the boy's murder. Number 3 is Terence Cottrell. On August 23, 2003, 46-year-old pastor Ray Hemphill was arrested on suspicion of child abuse after he helped perform a prayer service designed to remove evil spirits from an 8-year-old autistic boy named Terence Cottrell. Terence's mother, Patricia Cooper, believed that her son had evil inside of him based on some alarming things the boy would say to her, such as "kill me, take me, kill me." She brought him to Hemphill's church in northern Milwaukee, Wisconsin to get him help, and Hemphill decided an exorcism was the wisest course of action. Forming a circle around the possessed boy, the group held their hands over him and started to pray. Somehow, over the course of forcing out the evil spirits, young Terence lost his life due to asphyxiation. Number 2 is Anneliese Michel. At the age of just 16, Anneliese Michel, a deeply religious girl from West Germany, suffered a severe seizure and was soon after diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of the problems that she and her family would face as she began showing signs of being possessed. She started hearing dark voices that told her she was damned and began hallucinating whenever she prayed. Anneliese suddenly had a very hard time looking at or even walking past religious symbols such as the crucifix, and she refused to drink water that had been blessed. Things continued to escalate until a pair of priests began a 10-month-long series of exorcisms, performing over 70 in total. These sadly ended with the then 23-year-old Anneliese losing her life to the dark forces. And number 1 is the Ammons family. In January of 2014, Latoya Ammons, her 3 children, and her mother were put in the national spotlight when their stories became news. Located in Gary, Indiana, the Ammons family's home was given the nickname Demon House, and that's what was believed resided with the family. The first sign was a huge number of black flies swarming the screens of the home, despite it being a brisk December when they did so. Creaks, bangs, and footprints followed, but what truly shook Latoya was watching the effect the spirits had on her kids. She witnessed her son walking up a wall backwards, her daughter levitating, and one of them being smacked by unseen forces. Often and without warning, the children would begin speaking in grave tones, as if controlled, all of which led to the local authorities becoming believers as well. Busby's stoop chair. Imagine a chair stained with the darkness of a condemned man's final moments. This is Busby's stoop chair, once belonging to the 18th century killer Thomas Busby. Before his execution, Busby cursed the chair, proclaiming that death would befall anyone who dared to sit upon it. And the legend holds, countless individuals have met gruesome fates shortly after ignoring this chilling warning. The chair, now safely tucked away, remains a stark reminder of the potent power of a death curse. The haunted wedding dress. A symbol of love, hope, and new beginnings, twisted into a spectral shroud. This ethereal garment is said to be haunted by the spirit of a young woman who tragically perished before her wedding day. Witnesses claim the dress moves on its own, swaying gently as if an invisible bride were twirling. Cold drafts emanate from it, and some report hearing faint sobs, the echoes of a broken heart forever trapped within a delicate fabric. James Dean's Porsche 550 Spider, the Little Bastard. Speed, glamour, and death. These are the elements intertwined with James Dean's infamous Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard. The car, a symbol of rebellion and youthful exuberance, became a harbinger of doom. Dean's fatal crash was just the beginning. The car's wreckage continued to inflict tragedy, with subsequent owners and those who handled its parts suffering a series of horrific accidents and even deaths. Little Bastard became a chilling testament to the devastating power of a cursed object, a metal embodiment of ill fortune. The unlucky mummy. From the sands of ancient Egypt comes a tale of ancient wrath. This Egyptian artifact, housed in a British museum, is shrouded in a terrifying legend. Those who came into contact with the mummy or its sarcophagus suffered an inexplicable chain of misfortunes, from illness and injuries to financial ruin and untimely deaths. The whispers of a pharaoh's curse, a vengeful spirit guarding its eternal slumber, continue to resonate around this chilling relic. The Bassano Vase. Beauty can conceal unimaginable terror. The Bassano Vase, a stunning 15th century Italian artifact, is said to carry a deadly curse. Legend has it that the vase bears a chilling inscription, "Despise me not." Those who have owned this exquisite object have met with swift, tragic ends, leaving behind a trail of fear and unanswered questions. The vase, now hidden away, serves as a chilling reminder that some objects are best left undisturbed, their dark histories forever sealed within their elegant forms. Number 10 is Elizabeth Knapp. Elizabeth Knapp's alleged possession took place between October 1671 and January 1672. While this case is centuries old, what's so compelling about it is how well documented it is. In the town of Groton, Massachusetts, its town preacher, Samuel Willard, began to notice that one of his servants was acting strangely, so he wrote about it in his journal. Her name was Elizabeth Knapp. Her first symptoms included pain throughout her body, including the sensation of being strangled. She began to see two phantom people walking around her and a man floating above her bed. Samuel Willard documented the case, claiming to witness Knapp speaking in demonic voices and making animal noises. Willard's journal survives to this day, though exactly what happened to Elizabeth Knapp after these occurrences remains a mystery. Number 9 is Anneliese Michel. The case of Anneliese Michel's possession caused widespread controversy in her home country of West Germany. Diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy at the age of just 16, she and her family were convinced that her symptoms of convulsions, hearing voices telling her to rot in hell, drinking her own urine, and eating insects were all signs that she was possessed. A priest named Ernst Alt was given permission to carry out 67 exorcisms. After her death in 1976, the autopsy revealed she was suffering from starvation and dehydration. Though the priest and Anneliese's parents were found guilty of manslaughter, they did not go to prison. The priest claims that Anneliese was cured just before she died, while others suggest that this case is a prime example of superstition leading to people to commit terrible acts. Number 8 is Anna Eklund. Spanning several decades, the exorcism of Anna Eklund is among the most enduring of all time. Raised during the late 1880s, from an early age she exhibited signs of possession, including revulsion of holy objects. It was rumored that Anna's aunt, Nina, practiced occultism and had placed herbs in Anna's food, which resulted in her possession. After an initial exorcism in 1912, Anna underwent another in 1928. Her behavior during the exorcism was violent and included levitation, howling, and hanging from a doorway. Further exorcisms took place where Anna reputedly spoke in different languages and claimed to have been possessed by her own father. On December 23rd of that year, Eklund was reportedly cured of her demonic affliction and returned to a quiet life. However, the horrors of what happened to her remain fresh in many people's minds to this day. Number 7 is Golitbin Dittas. The Golitbin Dittas exorcism took place in Germany between 1842 and 1843 and remains one of the creepiest possession cases on record. Living in the Black Forest, Golitbin stayed with her 3 siblings. Those living nearby claimed strange events occurred around their home, including ominous noises at night. Soon, Golitbin reported seeing a female apparition with a baby in its arms. That is when bizarre poltergeist-like activity began, and it wasn't long before Golitbin was first exorcised. During the exorcism, she said she was possessed by a woman who murdered her own baby. She then proceeded to vomit up objects of sand and glass, with the dead woman speaking through her to those carrying out the exorcism. After 2 years and on Christmas Day, the demonic forces inside her were said to be finally put to rest. But the documented horrors of this terrifying situation are still studied to this day. Number 6 is Marichka Irina Cornici. The exorcism of Marichka Irina Cornici resulted in 5 members of the Roman Orthodox Church being convicted of murder. Led by a priest called Father Corigianu, the exorcism ended in tragedy when the 23-year-old died. Those involved claimed that she was genuinely possessed, citing the spontaneous nature of her symptoms and that her brother had seen a ghostly apparition move inside of her. Marichka had reportedly asked to be tied up to stop herself from committing suicide or murder. When the exorcism finished, she was supposedly cured, but soon she fell ill and died inside an ambulance. Those involved were sentenced to 14 years in prison, but it was later discovered that Marichka's death was due to an overdose of adrenaline given to her by paramedics. Number 5 are the Ursuline nuns. While most possessions involve an individual, the case of the Ursuline nuns in 1611 is a well-documented instance of mass possession. It began with a 17-year-old French nun called Madeleine. Rumors persisted that she had had an affair with the priest at a former convent. When she was moved to another convent in order to stop the scandal, she began to exhibit possessed behavior. This included convulsions in destroying religious objects. Within the isolated convent, 3 other nuns exhibited the same behavior, and by the end of that year, 8 of the nuns at the convent were declared possessed. During several of the exorcisms, Madeleine revealed that her lover, Father Gaufridi, had made a pact with the devil. The priest was executed by being burned at the stake. And the moment that happened, Madeleine's possessed behavior suddenly stopped. Number 4 is Clara Germana Salé. Clara Germana Salé was a South African girl who became involved in a notorious possession case. She claimed that at the age of 16, she made a pact with the devil, and this was the reason for her possession. The religious staff of the mission where she lived documented the case and claimed that she could speak languages that she had not previously known. Allegedly, she suddenly understood Polish, German, French, as well as other languages. While being unable to tolerate holy objects and showing the extraordinary strength often associated with possession cases, it was Clara's ability to psychically reveal individuals' deepest and darkest secrets which caused the greatest stir. When an exorcism was finally performed, it took 2 full days, during which she attempted to strangle the exorcist. It was said that at the end of the ordeal, she was finally cured, although nobody really knows for sure. Number 3 is Michael Taylor. The Michael Taylor possession remains one of the most tragic of its kind. Living in West Yorkshire in England during the 1970s, Michael was married to Christine Taylor. Both were members of a Christian fellowship group, and after being accused of adultery by Christine, Michael said that he had a deep evil within him. It was then that he began acting erratic. As a consequence, a local minister conducted an exorcism, and by the end, Michael was exhausted. He felt as though the 3 demons which he claimed had been possessing him, insanity, murder, and violence, were dormant but still there. The exorcist warned that despite casting out 40 demons, that Michael was still at risk. That day, when Michael returned home, he murdered his wife and his dog, and was found prowling the streets outside by a policeman, naked and covered in blood. Number 2 is Roland Doe. Roland Doe's possession was the inspiration for the 1973 classic The Exorcist. The trouble began when Roland's Aunt Harriet introduced him to a Ouija board before she died. After Harriet's death, strange noises were heard around the house and objects allegedly moved on their own, all while Roland was in the vicinity. An exorcism was then carried out, during which Roland broke his restraints, pulling out a bed spring from the bed and then stabbed the priest carrying out the ritual. Another exorcist saw the words hell and evil appear on the boy's skin, while Roland used a demonic guttural voice. To this day, this case remains one of the least understood, most disturbing, and horrific of all time. And number 1 is the Son of Sam. The Son of Sam was an infamous serial killer in the 1970s, but he also claimed to be possessed by a demonic force. His real name was David Berkowitz, and between 1976 and 1977, he murdered 6 people in New York, leaving a letter next to 2 of his victims. In it, Berkowitz refers to himself as the Son of Sam, and states that an entity known as Papa Sam keeps him locked in the attic, and that this demonic father figure yearns for blood to keep itself youthful. When Berkowitz Horowitz was finally caught, he stated that he had been possessed by a demon. He later converted to Christianity and retracted his claims of possession, but his evil crimes remain inextricably linked to the subject of demonic possession, and that even if these things don't exist, that the idea of them can be channeled to commit bloody atrocities. Number 1 is the possession of Roland Doe. Roland Doe was a 14-year-old boy from the state of Maryland. He was a seemingly normal child born into a German Lutheran family. His aunt, who was a spiritualist, introduced Roland to a Ouija board, and that is when everything changed. In January of 1949, Roland attempted to contact his dead aunt with the Ouija board. Shortly after that, however, strange noises began emanating from the family's home. Crosses and other religious items broke or flew from the walls, and cuts and scratches began appearing on Roland's body. Roland suddenly gained the ability to start speaking in tongues and, upon being admitted to the hospital, levitated from his bed. A Catholic priest, upon speaking with the boy, discovered multiple spirits were possessing him and proceeded to perform over 30 exorcisms. After suffering multiple injuries to himself, including a broken nose, the priest succeeded in freeing the boy. It was this story and exorcism that inspired the original 1971 novel, The Exorcist, that was turned into the blockbuster movie. And to this day, it's considered one of the most harrowing examples of demonic possession. Number 2 is the possession of Michael Taylor. In 1974, Michael and Christine Taylor were enjoying their life in Ossett, Great Britain, when Christine began noticing Michael's behavior was becoming more and more erratic. Upon bringing Michael to her Christian fellowship group, he became crazed, admitting that he felt evil within himself, and suddenly attacked the group's leader, Marie Robinson. From October 5th through 6th, a 24-hour exorcism was attempted, led by Father Peter Vincent. The clergy ended up determining that 40 demons had been taken out of Michael, but a few still remained. But that was an unfortunate omission, as upon arriving home, Michael murdered his wife with his bare hands, tearing out her eyes and her tongue, and almost tearing off her face. He then proceeded to strangle their poodle and was found later by a policeman naked in the street, covered with blood. Number 3 is the Smurl haunting. Jack and Janet Smurl were a regular couple who lived in a home in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. The couple alleged that between 1974 and 1989, a demon inhabited their home that caused loud noises and bad odors, and even threw their dog against the wall while shaking mattresses, and pushed one of their daughters down a flight of stairs, and even physically and sexually assaulted Jack on several occasions. The Smurls' claims gained wide press attention and were investigated by demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, who concluded that a very powerful force resided there. In 1987, after years of intense prayers and blessings, the Smurls claimed that everything eventually went back to normal. Their story was made into a 2-hour made-for-TV movie entitled The Haunted by 20th Century Fox. Number 4 is the possession of Anneliese Michel. Anneliese Michel was a German woman born to a Catholic family. Raised among 3 sisters, she was deeply religious and went to Mass twice a week. She had a mental illness coupled with epilepsy, and on one day began hallucinating while praying. She claimed she began seeing devil faces regularly and would hear voices telling her that she was damned and that she would rot in hell. The tauntings became too much for Anneliese, and in 1973, she suddenly tried taking her own life. She began acting erratically, eating insects, and even drinking her own urine. Over the next 10 months, 67 exorcisms were performed on Anneliese, who refused to eat so that she could kill the demons by dying with them inside of her. And on July 1st, 1976, she got her wish, as she died in her bed, a malnourished skeleton. The 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose was created loosely based on her horrific story. Number 5 is the possession of Arne Cheyenne Johnson. On February 16th, 1981, a seemingly normal man named Arne Cheyenne Johnson murdered his landlord, Alan Bono, in Brookfield, Connecticut. After repeatedly stabbing him with a pocket knife, his trial became widely known as the Demon Murder Trial, as he claimed that he was forced to commit the crime by a demon that overtook his body after fleeing the body of an 11-year-old boy. In a historic event, this became the first time in the history of the United States that someone tried using demonic possession as a defense. Ultimately, the judge threw threw it out, saying that the court would not recognize demonic possession as real. He was sentenced to up to 20 years in prison. However, he was released after only 5 and is now free to roam the streets. Number 6 is the Perron family. In 1970, Roger and Carolyn Perron, along with their 5 daughters, moved into what they thought would be the perfect home in Burrillville, Rhode Island. However, moving in proved otherwise. Almost immediately, within only a few days, bizarre occurrences began happening. Strange noises began emanating from the walls and terrible smells like rotting flesh permeated the home. However, it got much worse. Carolyn Perron was possessed by a spirit, causing her to speak in voices and finally to be thrown over 6 meters into the other room. Multiple exorcisms and spiritual cleansings were performed. However, it's claimed that they are still haunted to this very day. Their horrific story is widely known and became the subject of the 2013 film The Conjuring. Number 7 is the possession of Anna Eklund. The case of Anna Eklund became known as America's most famous case of possession. In 1912, at the young age of only 14, Iowa resident Anna Eklund had already begun to have severe symptoms of possession, including an intense aversion to anything holy or sacred, including blessed objects or images. She physically could not even enter a church because of some unseen force, and she had an almost obsessive interest in depraved and disturbing sexual acts. The church determined that she was possessed by multiple diabolic entities. However, oddly, some of them were at one time human, namely her father and aunt. Although Anna was a devout Catholic, her father and aunt practiced witchcraft, choosing Anna as their vessel after dying. A successful exorcism was performed, but she was quickly repossessed and would routinely speak languages that she had never spoken before, levitating and even climbing the walls like a spider. Then finally, after 23 days of exorcism rituals in 1928, Anna seemingly became herself again. Number 8 is the possession of Elizabeth Knapp. Elizabeth Knapp was the daughter of a farmer and the servant of the House of Willard in 1671. At the age of just 16, she began experiencing pains in her body. Shortly after that, she began displaying strange behaviors and claiming that she was visited by the devil one night and that she had made a pact with him, selling her soul for money and youth. Her appearance began to change rapidly, and she would speak in strange voices and would regularly scream out, "Money, money, sin, misery, misery." Even her body would become so contorted that it took several people to try to hold her down. Unbelievably, no other documentation was found on this event, and what happened to Elizabeth is unknown. Number 9 is the possession of Julia. In 2008, Dr. Richard E. Gallagher, a psychiatrist and associate professor of clinical psychiatry at New York Medical College, revealed a case of demonic possession of a patient known only as Julia. Multiple tests were done, and it was determined that Julia exhibited no signs of any mental disorders, and that her strange behavior was likely something more. After personally witnessing levitations, clairvoyance, and items moving around their own room, Dr. Gallagher concluded that Julia was indeed possessed by multiple demons. A number of exorcisms were performed, however, Julia continues to display signs of possessions to this day, telling the psychiatrists that they will be sorry for their actions. And number 10 is the possession of Clara Germana Salih. In 1906, a 16-year-old South African student named Clara Germana Salih was said to be possessed by a demon, making a pact with Satan himself. Religious authorities claimed that Clara demonstrated clairvoyance by revealing the most intimate secrets and transgressions of people with whom she had never had contact. She could not bear the presence of blessed objects and seemed imbued with extraordinary strength and ferocity, hurling nuns about the covenant rooms and beating them up. She could even speak and understand multiple languages that she couldn't before, and began making inhuman animal sounds. 2 separate priests performed an exorcism on Clara, where over 170 people witnessed her levitate while the exorcism was being performed. Ultimately, the priests were successful in driving out the evil inside of her, but what those witnesses saw that day would never be unseen. Number 10 is Edward Shue. When the body of a West Virginian woman was found at the foot of a staircase in 1897, her death was deemed to be a tragedy, but one brought about through natural causes. Her name was Elva Shue, and she was mourned by her husband. However, Elva's spirit soon revealed that her death was anything but natural. Elva's ghost haunted the dreams of her mother, Mary. Mary watched in horror as the ghastly apparition of her dead daughter twisted her neck at an unnatural angle, hinting at some dark secret. When Mary urged the authorities to look closer at the body of her daughter, it was revealed that Elva's neck had been broken by human hands, and that her husband, Edward, was the culprit. All of this testimony stood up in court, leading to the prosecution of Edward based on the cries of his wife from beyond the grave. Number 9 is William Corder. English couple Maria Martin and William Corder arranged to elope in 1827. They were to meet at the Red Barn, which was an old barn in Suffolk with red clay roof tiles, which was known to them both. After the meeting, William left town and Maria disappeared. William wrote letters to Maria's family, giving them vague reasons why Maria herself could not write to them. Soon after, Maria's stepmother began to have strange feelings about the Red Barn. She became convinced that the spirit of Maria was contacting her and urging her to investigate the building. When investigators followed this information, they discovered Maria's remains buried there. William was soon arrested. When found guilty, he was executed, and then his own remains were used to bind a book about his terrible crime. Number 8 is Alan Showery. In 1977, hospital employee Teresita Bass's body was discovered in her Chicago apartment after a fire. After concluding that the fire had been staged to cover up Teresita's murder, investigators found an entry in her diary which simply read, "Get tickets for AS." Frustrated by failed attempts to identify who AS was, police were shocked when they received an anonymous call indicating that a man named Alan Showery was the murderer. When the call was traced, the police spoke with a couple named Jose and Remy Chura. They claimed that Teresita's spirit had possessed Remy several times, conveying to them that Alan Showery was the murderer. They even knew details of the crime which had never been published, details which led to Alan Showery's arrest and incarceration. Number 7 is Adrian Deo. Adrian Deo lived in Ottawa, Canada, and was a known crack dealer. Unfulfilled with his chosen way of life, he cultivated the belief that he should have been a famous rap star. As this delusion took hold, he eventually came to believe that if he took a person's life, that his dreams would come to fruition. And so, in 2010, Adrian Deo murdered a woman named Jennifer Stewart. The murder was unsolved until Adrian came forward in 2013 to confess. The reason for his confession was that after killing Jennifer, he began to see her ghost everywhere. Just moments after the murder, he saw her spirit pass by him, and this led slowly but surely to a religious conversion. When he realized the killing was wrong and that he had to atone for it, he came forward, citing Jennifer's ghost as the reason behind his guilt. Number 6 is Jose Ferreira. In a similar story to Adrian's case, Wisconsin man Jose Ferreira was arrested 33 years after he committed a murder due to a supernatural intervention. The murder had taken place in 1982 when he pushed a 13-year-old girl called Carrie Ann Jopic down a flight of stairs to her death. Ferreira then buried the body, but despite police investigations, the case remained open. Fast forward 33 years and Jose Ferreira steps forward to confess, not just to the police, but to Carrie Ann Jopic's mother. In his exact words, he stated calmly, "Your daughter is haunting me." Carrie Ann's mother believes that the spirit of her daughter can now finally rest after the killer came forward, something which he did not confess out of guilt, but rather to stop the chilling apparition of his victim from terrorizing him at night. Number 5 is Billy Schmidt. The Keepers is a fascinating documentary series which exposed the murder of a nun named Sister Kathy Sesnick, who it is alleged was killed to cover up an abuse scandal at a local school. During the documentary, enthusiasts for the paranormal picked up a chilling detail. One suspect, Billy Schmidt, lived across the hall from Sister Sesnick. His family believes that he was involved, and years later, Billy Schmidt had a breakdown after moving home. He insisted that he was being haunted by the nun in the attic. When the family entered the attic, they found a mannequin wearing a nun's habit. Was Billy Schmidt being haunted by the spirit of Kathy Sesnick? And was it attached to the mannequin in the attic? Whatever the answer, the image of the nun's outfit in the attic remains mystifying, as well as terrifying in equal measure. Number 4 is Al Capone. Al Capone is one of the most famous mobsters of all time, but despite his notoriety as an American gangster, it is his connection to the shadowy world of the paranormal which lingers most, in some cases quite literally. Rumors persist that when Capone was first arrested, he would shout out the name Jimmy in fear. He believed that he was being haunted by one of his victims, and his fear grew to such lengths that even in the comfort of his own home, he would be terrorized by the vengeful spirit. Capone's bodyguards would often hear him cry out and then rush in to find him alone in his room. When Capone was sent to Alcatraz, Jimmy followed, never relenting. After his own death, Capone seems to have been doomed to haunt the cell where he spent many years, and you can't help but wonder if Jimmy is still in there with him. Number 3 is Albert Fish. They say the boogeyman isn't real, but for those who encountered Albert Fish in the early 20th century, they know that evil does exist. Albert Fish was a serial killer who committed a string of detestable crimes in a variety of locations, including Brooklyn. He was originally called Hamilton, but he chose the name Albert for himself later in life, taking on the identity of a sibling who had passed away as a child. He also claimed to hear voices telling him to commit his crimes, and some have speculated that these voices were somehow involved with the taking of the sibling's name, that he was possessed by something malevolent which hated life so much that it had to feed upon it. Reading about Fish's crimes, it's difficult not to think that his actions lacked all humanity and perhaps were driven by something demonic instead. Number 2 is Terry Childs. Terry Childs was a serial killer in Santa Cruz. After killing a man and woman named Christopher Hall and Joan Mack on a beach, Childs walked away without being caught. More than 3 decades later, Childs finally confessed to his terrible crimes. His reason, like many on this list, was that a sinister paranormal force had entered his life. He was being haunted and stalked not by just one, but by 2 spirits, those of his victims. Having already been incarcerated for other murders, he pleaded with his jailers to let him out of his cell so that he could confess and end his torment. Each night while he lay alone in his jail cell, the spirits of his dead victims would taunt him, scaring him so badly that he decided to do the unthinkable, to confess to the crimes and stop the spirits in his cell from, in his own words, eating away at his brain. And number 1 is Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald is infamous for assassinating John F. Kennedy in 1963. All manner of theories have been presented about Oswald, but one which is lesser known is that ghostly forces were involved in his crimes. Everyone has heard of the second gunman, the idea that there was another shooter present who killed Kennedy, but one theory speculates that occult forces invoked a supernatural entity to finish the president off. The reason given is that a secret society who controls the world's leaders from behind the scenes realized that Kennedy could not be bought. For fear of hiring an assassin who could be caught and confess, they manipulated Oswald into attempting the assassination and used their occult rituals to fire the killing shots. This of course seems outlandish, but then again, so does much surrounding the assassination of that president. Number 10 is the teen art thief. Move over Ocean's 11 because teenage art thief Lawrence McCall was a real-life heist mastermind. In 1977, the 16-year-old Philadelphian skipped school to visit art museums and lifted an Anton Braith painting off the museum wall and dropped it out the window and later sold it for $300. In addition, McCall stole another 22 paintings that he fenced through the biggest art gangster Sotheby's auction house. Believe it or not, this financed his MTV Cribs luxury apartment, a triple black Oldsmobile Regency, and a whole lot of jewelry. Bling bling, y'all, that's art money. Art money. A shooting is what led cops to his apartment, who noticed the priceless works of art just hanging on the walls. Believe it or not, the FBI couldn't prove McCall stole the paintings, but convicted him of mail fraud and transportation of stolen goods across state lines. In total, they recovered over $300,000 worth of stolen works from the Deschamps Museum collection. Okay, I don't know if it was the kid that was a mastermind or if it was the art museum's fault for just being completely dumb enough for letting random people be able to steal priceless artwork. It just hurts my brain. Number 9 is the cocaine coach. The St. Regis University Rangers baseball team had just lost in the Fall World Series in October of 2010 when the team's assistant coach, Ronald Rocha, got arrested for being part of a major cocaine ring. The U.S. Attorney's Office indicated that Rocha was transporting 20 kilos of cocaine from Joaquin El Chapo Guzman's cartel from El Paso, Texas into Denver, Colorado. It was there where it was distributed by street gangs, the Trade Deuce Gangster Crips, and Northside Mafia. The drugs were smuggled in secret compartments in cars and trucks until a shipment of 27 kilos was discovered during a traffic stop. In total, the feds nabbed 53 kilos of cocaine, 35 pounds of marijuana, and over $650,000 in cash. Coach Rocha obviously ended up going to jail where he became someone's pinch hitter. You know what I'm saying? Shortstop, you know what I'm saying? Bad things happen in jail. Number 8 is blind justice. Gary Foster was your typical legally blind junior executive at a major multinational banking behemoth when he decided, hey, let's try this whole embezzling thing. Leveraging his knowledge of Citigroup bank operations from 2003 to 2010, the New York-based accountant channeled $22 million into his personal account, assigning dummy contracts to cover his tracks. The divorced father of 2 spent lavishly on various mansions, a luxury apartment, including one across the street from a Citibank branch, bottle service at nightclubs, and a Maserati, BMW, and Gran Turismo for his hired chauffeur to drive him around in because he was, well, blind. An internal audit discovered Foster's large-scale theft, and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. You know, hopefully before he went to prison, he ended up using some of that money to get a defense mechanism for his butt, because he's gonna be sitting a lot in trials and stuff, you know? Number 7 is a soccer mom pimp. What's happening? Big Sally here, big pimpin'. Most moms go to work or back home after dropping her kid off at soccer practice, but not Anna Christina. The Scottish-born madam ran a prostitution ring in New York City's posh Upper East Side with a roster of girls including former Playboy playmates servicing high-end clients in finance, sports, and politics. Christina boasted that she made millions of dollars in her 15-year reign while raising 4 kids and rescuing pigs on a farm in Monroe, New York. She even claimed to have cops on her payroll, but was eventually busted for a single charge of orchestrating prostitution in July of 2011. Since Christina had no criminal record, she served only 4 months on a plea deal and later went on Dr. Phil to deny that she was ever the New York soccer mom madam. Well, we all know what can happen when you go on Dr. Phil. Remember the Cash Me Outside girl? Cash me outside, how about that? Now she's killing it with music and it's headaches. Number 6 is a one-teen crime wave. Essex, England experienced a crime wave from 2003 to 2009 that totaled almost 1.1 million British pounds of stolen goods. Later, the town of Chelmsford had a 500% increase in crime that was not the result of the mob, but instead one prolific teenager named Bradley Wernham. After being caught, he ended up confessing to committing 660 crimes, including home invasions and stealing luxury cars, starting when he was just 12. Now you'd think authorities would throw the book at Wernham, but since he was just a minor, Judge Christopher Ball sentenced him to just 150 hours of community service. Oh, and he also got a rent-free apartment. Yeah. But 19-year-old Wernham just loved to steal and was busted again just 3 months later trying to break into a house and steal a BMW, and was finally sentenced in 2010 to 5 years in jail. He better be good at stealing other men's hearts, because if not, he's going to end up as someone's boyfriend. Number 5 is the red-headed spy. High New York City society just loved the stunning late 20s red-headed Russian who ran her own real estate company, dined at the best restaurants, and partied at the hottest clubs. But that was just a cover while she and her friends gathered sensitive information and developed compromising material on policymakers. In June of 2010, this real-life Bond girl met with an FBI agent posing as a Russian official and was detained briefly before she and her fellow spies in the United States were sent back to Russia in the largest spy exchange since 1986. Chapman, the femme fatale, became famous across the world, especially in Russia, where she posed that October in the Russian Maxim magazine edition and had her own Russian TV show, Mysteries of the World with Anna Chapman. Look at that, just become a spy and betray all your friends and you could get your own TV show. That's the lesson, right? Number 4 is the baboon carjacker. South Africa has always had its share of dangerous criminals, but one short, hairy gangster named Fred remains a legend in Cape Point, 70 kilometers south of Cape Town. This baboon was an accomplished thief, known for stealing food by breaking into cars, both empty and occupied, terrifying tourists. Sorry, I'm kind of hungry. Mind? Thanks. Fred even had his baboon troop trained like mob foot soldiers to act as lookouts and distract tourists while Fred could rob 5 cars in 5 minutes. TV host Mark Evans said that Fred could bite like a lion, run like a cheetah, and rule his troop like a despotic emperor. Sadly, the baboon operational group was charged with neutralizing Fred via lethal injection in March of 2011. Oh, and by the way, Fred's autopsy revealed he had been shot 50 times. So much for monkey business. Wait, stop! That monkey was really, really smart. Is anybody else worried that this is the beginning of Planet of the Apes? In real life? No? Number 3 is the Queen of the Pacific. Sandra Avila Beltran grew up Mexican narco royalty as the niece of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, founder of the Guadalajara cartel. She became a key player in the Mexican drug trade in the late 1970s, even after both of her husbands and her brother were killed by assassins. She was called the Queen of the Pacific for smuggling cocaine into the United States with Mexican tuna boats. Yet, Sandra was not even on the DEA's radar that was until she asked American authorities in 2002 to help get her teenage son back from kidnappers demanding $5 million ransom. She was finally arrested in 2007 and spent a decade behind bars in total luxury with jewelry, maids, and Botox treatments. I'm not gonna say break the law, but if you are breaking the law, don't go to the law for help. Doesn't make sense. Number 2 is the four-legged vandal. The small North English town of Brampton in Cumbria experienced a 6-month car vandalism spree back in 2014 that left the local police confounded. There were 10 different incidents of tires being slashed and completely flat in the morning. Look, it was so bad that local residents started installing CCTVs in order to get to the bottom of it, and the Cumbria police monitored countless hours of footage. That was until a sharp-eyed policeman, Simon Amos, caught caught the culprit red-handed, or pod. It wasn't rascally kids releasing their teenage angst. No, actually it was a 2.5-year-old border collie named Jess who was chewing on tires during her daily walks. Jess had been hit with a car a few months back and was trying to teach other cars a lesson. See, dogs are smarter than you know. You think just because they go around smelling crotches and stuff that they aren't criminal masterminds. And number 1 is the Grandpa Gang. The biggest burglary in British history was committed by a gang of senior citizens. Their ringleader, lifelong criminal 76-year-old Brian Reeder, used his senior citizen bus pass to get to the scene of the crime. After 3 years of extensive planning, they broke into the Hatton Garden Safety Deposit in London, England on April 7th, 2015. They were able to disable the elevator, climb down the shaft, and drill through half a meter of cement. Their take was 14 million British pounds worth of jewelry, gold, and cash from 73 safety deposit boxes. But these analog criminals were no match for Scotland Yard's digital detectives who busted the gang using CCTV. The men, whose combined ages totaled 442 years old, were sentenced to a combined 34 years in jail. Whew, talk about bad grandpas. Number 1 is Ruben Zarate. On March 24th, 2008, 18-year-old Ruben Zarate walked into Velazquez Mufflers for Less in Chicago, Illinois at about 8 o'clock in the morning, wearing a mask and waving around a revolver while he was demanding money. The employees working there at the time explained that they had very little money and that they couldn't open the safe due to the fact that nobody knew the combination outside of the owner of the shop. Now, seeing as how the owner wasn't going to be there until much later that day, it seemed unfortunately that he was out of luck. However, determined to get his quick payday, the young man wrote down 2 phone numbers that he could be reached at and gave them to the man at the front desk, demanding that they call him the moment that the owner returned. Of course, instead, the employees called the police, and officers came to the shop in plain clothes, telling employees to call the man back. Once Zarate returned and pulled a gun out of his sweatshirt, police shot first and wounded him in the leg. He was charged the very next day with attempted robbery and aggravated assault of a police officer. Oh man, the safe is locked? Okay, well here's my number, my social insurance number, and my address. Call me later, okay. Number 2 is Derek Mosley. You know what they say, don't bring a knife to a gunfight, or at least bring more than a bat. On July 25th, 2013, 22-year-old Derek Mosley walked into a gun shop called Discount Gun Sales, located in Beaverton, Oregon, with nothing else but a baseball bat in his hand. Yeah, a gun shop. He smashed one of the glass display cases in order to steal a gun, but somehow never stopped to think that the shop's owner, clearly a gun enthusiast, might actually have a gun on him. Sure enough, the store manager pulled out his firearm, pointed it at Mosley, and demanded for him to get down on the ground. Other than pooping his pants, Mosley dropped the unloaded gun and knife and followed the instructions without incident. When police arrived, they found Mosley on the floor and arrested him immediately, charging him with first-degree robbery, first-degree theft, second-degree criminal mischief, and, naturally, unlawful possession of a firearm. Ha! You a stupid son of a bitch! Number 3 is Joey Miller and Matthew McNelly. On October 23rd of 2009, before attempting to rob a home in Carroll, Iowa, 23-year-old Matthew McNelly and 20-year-old Joey Miller decided instead of hiding their identities the traditional way, using masks or pantyhose, they would use permanent black marker. So they got a couple of Sharpies and scribbled all over their faces to disguise themselves. Oh man, brilliant. Nobody should have been able to recognize them, right? Well, the thing is, the problem with permanent marker is, permanent. After a call came in about the attempted burglary and suspects escaping in a vehicle, police managed to stop a car fitting the description, and they were absolutely shocked by what they saw. There were Miller and McNelly, still with marker on their faces. Appropriately nicknamed Dumb and Dumber, the two were charged with attempted burglary, and since the two were allegedly intoxicated at the time, McNelly was also charged with driving under the influence. Number 4 is Christian Bala. After his body was found in a stream in Wrocław, Poland in 2000, local small business owner Dariusz Janicki's murder went unsolved. That was until 2003 when police came across Amok, a book written by Polish author Krystian Bala. In the book, the character was murdered in the same way that the man was, described using information that only the true killer would be aware of, as investigators never released it to the media. After further investigation, police found numerous other similarities between Bala and the book's main antagonist, Chris. As it turns out, Bala was the murderer and the book was a chronicling of what he did. He was arrested in 2007 and was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the planning and committing of the murder of Dariusz Janicki. But interestingly, his book sales ended up exploding because of his conviction. Yeah, I guess that's one way to sell a book. Number 5 is Darren Kimpton. If you've got over 36 convictions for breaking and entering and burglary, odds are pretty good that you're probably terrible at it. Specifically the getting away part. Someone should have told 49-year-old Darren Kimpton that a long time ago before he decided to break into the same house twice in one night. While trying to break into a Northampton, England home on December 22nd, 2012, Kimpton cut himself, leaving some blood on the door lock. Wanting nothing more than to steal items to sell in order to buy Christmas presents for his parents, he went to try breaking into the same house again. What he failed to notice, however, was that police were already on the property, as the homeowner had already obviously called the police. After putting his hand through the already broken window and trying to let himself in, the police watched him enter. Look at this stupid fool. You got this on camera? Yeah, I got the Billy Bat. We taking this fool down. Following a brief struggle, Kimpton was caught and tests later confirmed that the blood on the house's lock was indeed his. Well, I really hope Darren's parents enjoy their soap and cigarette Christmas gift. Number 6 is Quentin J. Thomas. On December 27, 2005, 20-year-old Stephen Kelly of Maryland was shot in the back of the head and killed during a robbery gone wrong. Shortly after, 22-year-old Quentin J. Thomas was arrested and charged with the murder. While awaiting his trial, Thomas sent out some letters to his friends on the outside. Now, what you need to understand is that at the Montgomery County Jail, only incoming mail was checked, mostly for contraband. Outgoing mail was not. Knowing this, Thomas was confident that by writing down instructions to stop certain people from testifying would be received without anybody intercepting it. Man, Quentin, you're a super genius. You brilliant. You know, except for the fact that when you put incriminating orders in writing and then misspell the address on the envelope, oh, that's not good. The letter arrived back to the prison marked return to sender. And of course, as incoming mail to the prison, it was opened by guards and Thomas was busted. It was added to the prosecutor's evidence and Thomas was later sentenced to life without parole. Number 7 is Frank Singleton. In March of 2008, 21-year-old Frank Singleton was released from a Florida County jail after serving time for a misdemeanor trespassing charge. Realizing that his journey home would require nearly a 6.2-mile-long hike, he decided to take a shortcut by carjacking someone and driving their car home. That someone was 23-year-old Justine Lapierre, who cooperated with the ex-con when handing over the keys when he demanded them. Yeah, see, the problem is though, sadly for Singleton, he didn't get very far because, as it turns out, the car that he'd stolen was a 2006 Nissan 350Z, a car that had a manual transmission. Since he didn't know how to drive stick, Singleton was unable to operate the vehicle and was immediately arrested. Now, you might be asking yourself, but Matt, how did he get caught so quick? Why didn't he just run away? Well, it turns out that the car that he stole was parked in the jail visitors parking lot. Yeah, that's right. He walked out of jail a free man, got lazy, and tried carjacking a car right out of a police parking lot. He literally wound up right back in his cell, now charged with carjacking, and all because he didn't feel like walking. Oh, you lazy, oh, you stupid. Oh, got a bit of cough. Number 8 is James Allen. As any experienced shoplifter will tell you, it's never a good idea to hit the same place twice, but that clearly was never advice heard by this guy. After successfully robbing a corner store on February 23, 2012, 28-year-old James Allen returned to rob the same shop on March 2nd, only 10 days later. The second time, however, things didn't exactly go as planned. After waving a plastic gun and grabbing some cash from the till, Allen tried to run off, pushing the pull door, obviously without success. He kicked at the door violently, wanting to kick out the glass panels, but instead fell backwards into a drinks display. Frustrated, he removed the balaclava he was wearing right in front of the security cameras and demanded that the manager, Amanda Kroc, let him out. As if that wasn't bad enough, just 3 hours later, the police found him still on the same street as the shop with his balaclava stuffed in his pocket. Open the door, man, I want to get out! You can get out, it says pull. Ain't no time to listen, fix it! Number 9 is Dennis Hawkins. In July of 2010, 48-year-old Dennis Hawkins decided to rob a bank in Swissvale, Pennsylvania. He decided to wear the ultimate identity concealing disguise, a blonde wig, fake breasts, and clown pants. Using a toy BB gun that he'd shoplifted that morning from a local Kmart, Hawkins made off with an undisclosed amount of cash, fleeing as best he could in a ridiculous outfit. The disguise might have worked for him had it not been for the mustache and goatee, which he decided not to shave off, which showed up clearly in the surveillance footage. After police sent out a description of Hawkins, a gas station attendant reported someone fitting that unique description attempting to steal a car from their parking lot. When police arrived, it was obvious that they had found their clown man. Despite not wearing the wig anymore, he still had on the fake breasts and was covered in red dye, a result from the exploding packet in the bag of money that he stole. Got away with it, oh man! Red dye everywhere. I'm keeping these breasts on. And number 10 is Christopher Kron. Okay, there's incompetence and then there's asking to be arrested, and this guy was definitely the latter. In August of 2008, ADT, a security company, received an alarm notification from a restaurant called Junk Canoe Bar in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Following protocol, the agent called the business in the event that the alarm was accidental. But to her surprise, 47-year-old Christopher Kron answered the phone. Kron had just broken into the restaurant and didn't seem to mind that the phone call had interrupted his robbery, even giving the representative his actual full name. Hi, how are you? Yes, I'm lonely. Yes, I broke into a store. My name's Christopher Kron, and I'm going to jail. Okay. When he couldn't give the correct password, the agent notified the police, but Kron escaped with 2 bottles of alcohol. Oh, big score. Incredibly, the next morning, he went back to that restaurant that he had robbed to have a drink and was immediately recognized by an employee who had seen the surveillance video. The police arrived. Kron was immediately arrested. What an idiot. Number 10 is D.B. Cooper. D.B. Cooper not only evaded authorities, but he completely disappeared. Boarding a Northwest Orient Airlines jet in November of 1971, he hijacked the plane and revealed that he was carrying a bomb in his suitcase. In return for the safety of the passengers, he demanded a ransom of $200,000 along with 4 parachutes. The plane landed in Seattle, where Cooper released everyone except most of the flight crew once the money and parachutes were given to him. The plane then took off, and while caught in a heavy storm, Cooper jumped out with the money and parachutes with him. Authorities believe he would have landed in a remote area near Mount St. Helens, caught in the grips of a bitter winter. But Cooper was never found. Some people believe that he died, and others believe he just got away with it. And if he did get away with it, what's the point if you're stuck in a freezing cold climate? I've got a lot of money. I've got frostbite too, but at least a lot of money. Number 9 is the human bomb. In 1996, a gunman turned a cab driver into a human bomb and then disappeared, never to be caught. His victim, Harvey McLeod, picked up the mysterious man in a cab. Soon, the passenger pulled out a gun and chained a bomb to Harvey, revealing that he could set it off at will with his phone. Harvey was forced to carry another bomb into a bank and threaten everyone with it in return for money. But in an act of heroism, Harvey took the second bomb with him as he left, so that no one else could be hurt. But when he returned to the cab, all that he found was a note telling him to drive to a specific payphone and wait for a call. So scared crapless, he did this, but he realized that that payphone couldn't accept incoming calls. So the police were informed, and it turned out that the bombs were fake. So while the gunman never actually got his money, he did get away scot-free. Number 8 is Rocco Perry. Rocco Perry was a powerful crime boss who, after a string of crimes, vanished and was never caught by police. Operating out of Canada, where obviously all the criminals are, he made a name for himself selling illegal alcohol after the drink was banned due to the Ontario Temperance Act of 1916. Known as the King of Bootleggers, he was constantly under surveillance by the Canadian police. Oh, this guy looks like a lot of trouble, eh? Better keep an eye out on him. They also suspected him of a number of other crimes, including extortion, organizing gambling rings, as well as running illegal brothels. Rocco Perry was also suspected of being directly and indirectly involved in gang violence, even wiping out a rival organized crime family. After a number of attempts on his life, Perry was last seen alive on April 23rd, 1944. Listen, I'm not saying I know what this guy is. All I am saying is you don't want to mess with the Canadians, because you don't know. You might end up drowning in Nevada maple syrup, but capiche? Number 7 is Lord Lucan. Lord Lucan was a member of the British aristocracy who allegedly committed murder and then used his resources to evade police capture. In 1972, Lucan had separated from his wife Veronica, and by 1974, they were locked in a bitter battle for custody of their 3 children. But on November 7th of that same year, Veronica claimed that she was attacked by her husband and that he'd murdered their nanny. She ate all the cookies I told her not to. It's not my fault. Fleeing the scene of the crime, Lucan wrote a letter that night claiming that he had stopped someone else from attacking his wife, but that she was using the opportunity to accuse him of murder. An inquest did find that Lucan was guilty of the crime, but there has been much debate about it ever since. But whoever committed the murder doesn't change the fact that Lord Lucan, guilty or not, disappeared into the night. Just like Batman. Lord Lucan, he's Batman. Number 6 is Victor Garina. Victor Garina stole $7 million of cash, and even though the authorities think they know where he is, he's never been arrested. The crime took place on September 12, 1983. Garina was 23 years old at the time and was working as an armored truck guard. It was his responsibility to protect any money or high-value items inside the truck. By the way, quick pause. Good job doing a background check on this guy, everybody. All right, no worries. Instead, Garina overpowered 2 of his colleagues and made off with millions of dollars. While he reportedly told one of his colleagues that he was only doing it because he was tired of working for other people, it turns out he was actually a member of a Puerto Rican terrorist group. He was never caught, though the FBI believe that he's still hiding in Cuba. Fortunately for Garina, and unfortunately for the authorities, they can't pursue him due to having no jurisdiction there, and the Cuban government refuses to extradite him. Listen, I don't know if you know just how much $7 million is in Cuba, but it's not exactly a rich country, so let's just say this guy is never gonna get caught. Hey man, is that Victor Garina? Nope. Number 5 is the Gardner Museum robbers. The Gardner Museum theft is one of the most ambitious heists in history, and yet the perpetrators have so far evaded capture. It took place on March 18, 1990 at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. 2 men impersonated police officers claiming that they were responding to a report of a disturbance. The museum security guards let the men inside, but quickly realized their mistake. You're police? Oh yeah, please come in. Oh, that guy had a face tattoo. The robbers tied up the security guards and then stole 13 works of art worth an estimated $500 million. As of today, none of the works have been found, and it may be that the robbers have sold them on the black market or were hired by a rich collector to steal them in the first place. But what adds an even more bizarre twist to this story is that several pieces of forensic evidence have disappeared while in the FBI's care. This is an easy one to solve. Have you ever seen the Thomas Crown affair? It was Thomas Crown. What? That's fiction? Okay, let's move on. Number 4 is Sylvester Matuska. Sylvester Matuska was a talented mechanical engineer who used his talents to commit bizarre crimes and then get away with them. But unlike most murderers, Matuska's weapon of choice wasn't a gun or even a knife, it was a train. After 2 failed attempts to derail trains in Austria in 1930 and early 1931, Matuska was finally successful. He derailed a train near Berlin, injuring more than 100 people, some seriously. He then derailed another train train, this time heading for Vienna, which resulted in the deaths of 22 people. Now, while Matuska was arrested and convicted, in the end he escaped, never serving his sentence. While no one can be sure of his motives, many believe that he was simply a psychopath. Ha! What do you want, money? No, I just like trains. Number 3 is Matteo Messina Denaro. Matteo Denaro is perhaps the most infamous organized crime boss of all time, and he's still out there. Denaro first rose to prominence during the 1990s. After the death of Bernardo Provenzo in 2016 and Salvatore Rina in 2017, he's believed to be the leader of the Sicilian Mafia. Being on the run since 1993, after allegedly being involved in several killings, Denaro has continued to add to his infamy until earning the name the Boss of Bosses. But being a fugitive all these years hasn't stopped him ruling with an iron fist and overseeing criminal activities worth billions. As of 2018, Italian police continue to seize his assets and hunt him down, and yet Denaro has evaded them at every turn, continuing his successful reign for decades. Wait a second, I'm seeing a pattern here. All the powerful Italian mob bosses' last name end with an O. Donato, Provenzo, Santoro. Number 2 is the Zodiac Killer. Hide your kids, hide your wife! In one of the most infamous crimes of the 20th century, the Zodiac Killer is an as-of-yet unidentified serial killer who operated during the 60s and 70s. The Zodiac killed at least 7 people aged between 16 and 29. At the time, the local press in San Francisco received bizarre letters purportedly from the killer himself. Oh my god, he's gonna kill a woman named Jane! Oh, this is his grocery list! The letters included taunts to those trying to catch him and 4 cryptograms containing coded messages. The letters claimed these codes would reveal the killer's identity to those smart enough to decode them, but only one of these have ever been partially solved. The message states that the killer was collecting slaves for his time in the afterlife. Now, while the Zodiac was never caught, suspects were identified, but unless new evidence is found, it's unlikely that the killer will ever be found or brought to justice. Well, if it was the 60s and 70s, he probably had like cool long hair, man. So the best thing he could do is just shave his head, maybe grow a beard, big wide smile. No one would suspect that. And number 1 is Aribert Heim. After the collapse of Nazi Germany in 1945, some of the most prominent members of the Nazi Party went into hiding. But of all of these, Aribert Heim is perhaps the most infamous. Heim was guilty of crimes against humanity during the Holocaust. He carried out abhorrent medical experiments on the Jewish prisoners at a concentration camp. No one knows how many people he killed during his horrific experiments, but it was at least several hundred. Although captured at the end of the war, he was released because no one knew the extent of his crimes. After living in Egypt and working as a gynecologist, he became a fugitive in 1962 when his crimes became known. Now, Heim's son claims that his father died in 1992 of cancer, but no one can be certain. Number 1 is the Vacuum Gang. In France, there's a gang of thieves that have been stealing money from supermarkets since 2006. Their brilliance is that unlike other thieves that might use safe cracking or explosives, this gang has been emptying safes using nothing more than a drill and a modified vacuum. They discovered a weakness in the type of safe used by French supermarket chain Monoprix. By drilling into the delivery tubes near the safes, they simply hook up their device to it and suck out the envelopes of cash. They have successfully stolen at least $800,000 from 15 different stores since they've started. What's most surprising is that Monoprix has no plan to change their cash delivery system, despite the fact that it's cost them nearly $1 million over the last several years. See, sometimes the simplest things are the most successful. Maybe that's why so many of you subscribe to me. Number 2 are the Credit Lyonnais burglars. On March 30th, 2010, a group of thieves stole millions of euros of cash and valuables from the Credit Lyonnais bank in Paris. They first waited until the bank was closed for renovations. They then tunneled into the bank, subdued a guard, broke into the vault, and emptied 125 safety deposit boxes. Finally, they set the building on fire, destroying any evidence and allowing them to get away scot-free. What's incredible about this story is not that they got away with it, but but that the whole operation took 9 full hours and they still got away with it. Really though, one guard to watch an entire bank for 9 full hours and nobody checked on him? Either this was an inside job or the robbers had horseshoes up their asses. Or they just realized that they were hitting up a really stupid bank. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the latter. Number 3 are the Pink Panthers. The Pink Panthers were a Serbian gang of jewel thieves known to be responsible for the robberies of 120 jewelry stores in over 20 different countries. They were known for their daring escapes and creative break-ins, including one famous heist where they all dressed up as women, broke into a jewelry store, and stole $108 million worth of jewelry. Their crowning achievement, however, was the theft of a diamond worth 500 million pounds in London. The thieves hid the diamond in a jar of face cream, similar to the movie Return of the Pink Panther, which is how the group earned their name. That is crazy stuff. Number 4 is the Friday Night Robber. Carl Gagosian was a successful American thief that had the smarts to make his criminal career last 30 years. He began robbing shops when he was 15 and dedicated himself to a lifetime of crime, even going as far as to get a master's degree in systems analysis. He was extremely meticulous with his planning, using 2 separate getaway vehicles, and even had very specific criteria to narrow down which banks were the most vulnerable, ensuring his success. 3 decades and $2 million later, the only reason that he got caught was pure and simple bad luck. One day, 2 teenage boys just happened to discover his cache of weapons and masks while playing in the park that happened to have his fingerprints on it. As of right now, he's still serving his 17-year sentence, and I hope to hell he's had better luck in prison, otherwise I'm sure he ended up as Big Bubba's personal pincushion. Yikes. Number 5 is Derek Bertie Smalls. Bertie Smalls was a British robber who led a gang of thieves in the 1960s and 70s. He led several successful bank robberies, including one where he got away with £238,000, which was a record theft at the time. Unfortunately for him, his streak ended when a member of his gang gave him up to the police. However, Bertie always had incredible survival instincts and was very smart when it came to avoiding jail, so this time was no exception. Faced with 25 years in prison, he offered to give up the name of every single person he had ever been connected with, and for testifying against all of his former friends, was offered immunity and successfully avoided jail time. Pretty sweet deal considering he led a lifetime of crime, except for the rumor that there's a £1 million bounty on his head from some very powerful underground mob bosses, so he's free, but you know, now he's got a significantly shorter lifespan. Number 6 is the 300 million yen robber. On December 10th of 1968, a bank car transporting 300 million yen, worth about 817,000 US, was pulled over by a policeman on a motorcycle. The policeman warned that there was a bomb under the truck, so all 4 armed guards exited the vehicle while the policeman inspected it. The only problem is the policeman wasn't a policeman. He was actually an unknown bank robber who simply drove away with the cash, never to be seen again. Now this might sound silly, but in the guard's defense, that specific bank had been getting a lot of bomb threats as of late, so it wasn't unreasonable to hear that there was a bomb under the truck. Still, that being said, Japan, you might want to step up your security game, you know what I'm saying? Damn. Number 7 are the Boston art robbers. On the night of March 18th, 1990, 2 men gained access to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. They stole an estimated $500 million worth of art, including priceless masterworks by Rembrandt and Manet, among others. Dressed as police officers, they were able to convince security that they were responding to a call, after which they raided the museum, stealing 13 pieces of historical, one-of-a-kind pieces of artwork. Despite this being the largest private property theft in history, the truly amazing thing is that the statute of limitations has run out, so even if these men came forward, they could not be charged with a crime. Man, these guys need to come forward. I mean, they can't be charged with a crime, so at a minimum, they'll probably be given a movie deal and become celebrities. I mean, we have made people like Honey Boo Boo famous, so these guys definitely have a shot. Number 8 is the School of Turin. The School of Turin was a name given to a group of thieves led by criminal mastermind Leonardo Notarbartolo in Belgium. They were the ones responsible for the infamous Antwerp diamond heist, which was dubbed the heist of the century. Every step of the heist was carefully planned and executed, everything from Leonardo staying in the bank vault the night before to learning and bypassing the most intricate workings of the bank vault. They were even smart enough to have the foresight to not only grab the diamonds, but the paperwork needed to sell them as legitimate. Interestingly, they all got away with it except Leonardo, who was convicted purely on DNA evidence found on a half-eaten sandwich found by the crime scene. Damn, well, it just goes to show you never commit a robbery on an empty stomach. You're more likely to slip up. Number 9 are the Baker Street burglars. In 1971, a team of thieves tunneled into the Lloyds Baker Street Bank vault in London, stealing £3 million worth of cash and valuables from safety deposit boxes. During the heist, a radio operator overheard their transmissions and contacted police, who frantically searched over 700 banks in the area. Amazingly, police arrived at that very bank, but upon seeing no damage to the vault door, left and continued searching other banks. But despite several of the men getting caught years later, the true mastermind of the plot was said to be a London car dealer who was never caught. Interestingly, this story was the basis for the movie The Bank Job starring Jason Statham, who just happens to be one of my favorite actors because he's got the whole bald with a beard thing going on. It's my favorite look. And number 10, D.B. Cooper. One of the most infamous and mysterious criminals in history is D.B. Cooper. On November 24th of 1971, a man named Dan Cooper, whose real name has never been discovered, hijacked a Boeing 727 claiming that he had a bomb in his suitcase. Upon landing in Seattle, he demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. Shortly after the plane taking off for Mexico, he jumped out of the aircraft over the mountains northwest of Portland. Even after years of searches and ongoing FBI investigations, neither he nor the money were ever found. It's amazing to think that there was once a time when criminals in America could actually get away with hijacking an airplane. Today he probably would have been wrapped up in an American flag while everybody aboard that flight beat the piss out of him and yelled, "America!" Number 10 is The Willows. The Willows is a terrifying ghost story based on real events that happened to one man. Algernon Blackwood published the story in 1907, and it follows 2 friends who are on a canoe trip down the river Danube. After finding an island in the middle of the river, they land on it and camp there for the night. However, as the waters rise around them, they find themselves stranded there, and after seeing what they think to be a corpse in the water, they suddenly realize the island is haunted. Blackwood himself has come out as saying that he has traveled extensively and that the rumors that this story is based on his life experience turned out to be true. Oftentimes, authors will put their real terrifying stories into fictional tales with characters because nobody will believe them. Number 9 is The Flying Dutchman. The concept of a ghost ship has been used as a fictional device in films, novels, and most famously in Samuel Taylor Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. But shockingly, many of these stories are actually based on real-life ghost ships. The Flying Dutchman is a large sailed ship which is doomed to sail forever and can never make port. Many believe that to even see the Flying Dutchman is an omen of doom. The stories of the ship go back to at least 1790, when a traveler described how sailors feared seeing the Flying Dutchman and believed that it was an apparition of a ship which could not make port during bad weather. It sank beneath the waves and its crew drowned with it. The Flying Dutchman has since been seen in multiple similar storms, and all sailors know to avoid it lest they suffer the same fate. Number 8 is Martin's Close. M.R. James wrote many of the greatest ghost stories of all time, and one in particular is based on a real event that took place in the 18th century England. The story is called Martin's Close and tells the story of a young woman with learning difficulties who falls in love with a rich man. Whenever the man walked through town, the woman would follow and sing to him. Eventually, he killed her, and afterwards was haunted by her ghost, who either taunted him or was obsessed with him still, depending on your reading of the story. Since the writing of the story, it has been discovered by researchers that that story is based on the real case of Henry Malcolm, who supposedly treated a similar young woman badly, which led to her suicide. Number 7 is The Woman in Black. The Woman in Black was written in 1982 by Susan Hill. It tells the story of a remote coastal village in England, which is preyed upon by a malevolent apparition known as the Woman in Black. Whenever this ghostly figure is seen, a child soon dies. Horrifyingly, this was a real experience that Susan Hill had, which led to her writing The Woman in Black. One winter evening on the Suffolk coast, Susan walked along a path which cut across a beach looking out to the North Sea. It led to a notorious deserted marsh, and as the sun set, Susan was heading home and came across a rotting boat lying in the mud. She suddenly realized that she was not alone. The shadows moved around her, and a strange light shone nearby. Ever since that encounter, children that she encountered began dying one by one. Number 6 is the Amityville Horror. Written by Jay Anson in 1977, the Amityville Horror is based on a terrifying case of supernatural malevolence. This story was so powerful that it caused mass interest in haunted houses throughout the 70s and 80s, and was even produced into a series of successful horror films. However, the events that are depicted in the book are real and chilling. In November of 1974, a man shot and killed his entire family as they slept. In total, the body count of dead people was 6. The house where this happened was on the south shore of Long Island, and the man who did this soon claimed that the house had been haunted and that he had been possessed to commit such barbaric murders. Now this may seem far-fetched, however, soon after, another family moved into the house. Lasting just 28 days, that family left, as paranormal phenomena had driven them from their new home. Number 5 is The Signal Man. The Signal Man was written by Charles Dickens in the 1860s. It is one of the most terrifying ghost stories ever written, and it was significantly influenced by Charles Dickens' own life experiences. In this story, a signalman whose duty it is to change points and signals on a train track is confronted by a hooded figure by the mouth of a nearby train tunnel. Each time the figure appears, a horrible tragedy occurs on the train line. Charles Dickens himself was involved in a train crash in 1865. The train derailed on a viaduct, causing carriages to fall into the water below. Dickens himself survived and attended to many of the wounded and dead. It's said that he was haunted by this event until the last years of his life, and that an ominous figure of the signalman directly relates to that experience. Number 4 is The Shining. Stephen King's classic 1977 novel, The Shining, is based on his own life and the chilling hauntings of the Stanley Hotel. While visiting Colorado's Stanley Hotel in 1974, King was influenced by its eerie atmosphere. He and his wife were the only 2 guests in that hotel because it was getting ready to close for the season. After being isolated and walking the empty halls, King began to have nightmares that his young son was being chased screaming through those very same corridors. Many believe that the hotel has a haunting presence living within it, and that perhaps King himself was influenced by it. He was also struggling with an alcohol addiction at the time, similar to the character Jack Torrance in the book. The Shining is literally a product of a haunted location and a man haunted by addiction and forces in real life. Number 3 is The Changeling. Released in 1980, the screenplay for The Changeling was based on the direct paranormal experiences of its writer, Russell Hunter. He believed that while living in a mansion in Denver, that the ghost of a young boy made contact with him. Through unexplained noises and bangs throughout the house, Hunter discovered a hidden children's room on the property. The writer then attempted to contact the spirit through a seance. The ghost directed him towards another house where the spirit said that its bones and a gold medallion bearing the boy's name could be found. It turns out that the boy was a wheelchair user and had been murdered while still a child. Russell Hunter used these chilling experiences to write The Changeling and tell the spirit's harrowing story. Number 2 is A Christmas Carol. Every year, people sit down to read or watch a version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, but what many people don't realize is that A Christmas Carol was partly inspired by real-life events. The book tells the story of a miser called Ebenezer Scrooge. He's a moneylender and is as cold-hearted as they come. On Christmas Eve, he's visited by 3 spirits which show him the error of his ways. As it turns out, Scrooge himself was actually based on a real person. He was a banker from Edinburgh called Ebenezer Scroggie. The man had told of stories of how he was haunted throughout his life by the decisions that he made. Dickens took his terrifying life story of being haunted by the paranormal and turned it into a book. And number 1 is The Monkey's Paw. Published in 1902, The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs is both a legendary ghost story and based on fact. In the story, a family finds an old mummified monkey's paw. They are told that the paw had a spell placed upon it and that it grants the owner 3 wishes. However, the wishes are granted at a terrible cost. The family wishes for £200 to pay off their mortgage. The next day, their son is killed at a factory and they're given £200 in compensation. 10 days after the funeral, the family wishes for their son back, and his mutilated body walks slowly up the driveway towards their home. The truth behind this story is that there are in fact relics, including cursed monkey paws and rabbit feet, which you can buy at certain shops. These items have been known to bring with them terrible misfortune. However, those who buy them are not aware of this. Number 10 is Hidden History. On the surface, a neighbor can seem harmless, but they may have a darker side behind closed doors. For one Redditor posting about their strange experience with a creepy neighbor, what they found in their neighbor's house was very bizarre. Their dad was helping the next door neighbor with something at their home because the neighbor and his wife were elderly and needed assistance. While in their home, that person's dad glanced into a spare room, and what he saw shocked him. The room was filled with Nazi memorabilia, swastikas, and all. It turned out the elderly wife's family had been Nazis, and the old couple were seemingly proud of this. While they didn't parade this in front of people, behind closed doors they celebrated the evil of that unforgivable regime. Number 9 is Private Viewing. Privacy can be a problem if you have inquisitive neighbors. That's why some feel the need to install high fences or plant trees around their property. But usually people are respectful of such things because they wouldn't like to have their privacy invaded in the same manner. In one instance, however, an account circulated online where a neighbor went to great lengths to enjoy watching his neighbors. Looking out from their bedroom window, a homeowner noticed something very worrying. In a neighbor's house, he could see a telescope sitting in a room. The telescope was pointing straight at the homeowner's bedroom window. If this wasn't unnerving enough, the homeowner began noticing that the neighbor only ever sat in that room at night with a dim nightlight on, just enough light to see him moving around the telescope. Number 8 is What Made That Noise? Sometimes a neighbor attempts to intervene in the behavior of others out of the goodness of their heart. They're trying to do the right thing, and if you're on the receiving end of this and feel like you've done nothing wrong, it can absolutely feel like you're being unfairly treated. However, in one such instance, a homeowner received this exact kind of intervention and was utterly creeped out by it. One day he opened his front door and found a note attached to the outside. It was from his neighbor and read, "You need to feed your cats or I'm going to call animal control. I can hear them meowing." The homeowner was shocked, not by his neighbor's interference in his own business, but rather by the fact that he didn't own any cats. He still thinks about this and wonders what the neighbor really heard coming from his house. Number 7 is A Casual Confession. One online story of a creepy encounter with a neighbor involved a casual conversation. The neighbor appeared at the original poster's home to make a complaint. Apparently, a shared pipe was spewing out some sort of foam liquid. The neighbor was convinced that it was something to do with them. During the conversation, it became clear that the neighbor had quite a bit to drink due to the way that he was speaking. When the conversation calmed down and became more civil, the neighbor casually made a confession in a throwaway comment. He said that he had been driving around on a nearby road and ran over an old man, killing him. Whether the confession was true or just the ramblings of a drunk man, the poster has kept his distance from the neighbor ever since. Number 6 is a knock at the door. When a neighbor knocks at your door, you probably expect them to be asking to borrow something, or there to let you know that there's some neighborhood issue you should be aware of, but you don't expect them to be pleading for their life. That's what happened to one anonymous homeowner whose story was related by a friend online. One day, a knock came at her door, and she was puzzled to see a disheveled girl about 15 years old standing on her doorstep. Cautious, the homeowner of the house opened the door and asked politely what she wanted. The girl then confessed that she had been held captive in the next house, and the homeowner had kept her in his bathroom without ever letting her leave. The homeowner immediately called the police, and the neighbor was arrested. Number 5 is on campus. On a college campus with a communal area, there's even less protection from neighbors than usual. In one instance, a college student had their own living space with a communal area that they shared with 4 people. One of those people was a man named Hugh. Hugh had obvious problems. For starters, when the shared kitchen knives disappeared, they were found in Hugh's room. He had embedded them into the wall, but that was nothing compared to his most worrying behavior. After helping Hugh move some things from his previous place, the college student was terrified by Hugh's attempts at thanking him. Hugh picked the lock on the student's room door one night, stood at the front of his bed, and when the student woke, simply said, "Thank you for helping me," and left. After that, the student barricaded his door every night. Number 4 is Keen Gardiner. Harry Bridges' aunt once told him an eerie story about a neighbor she lived next to during the 1970s and 80s. The neighbor seemed reasonable enough, and she was always tending to her garden, which was filled with roses. The flowers on display were always commented on, people no doubt wondering what her secret was. As it turns out, the neighbor did have a secret, and a pretty macabre one at that. She was a volunteer at a local blood bank. When she was there, the neighbor would take bags of expired blood, sit in her garden in front of her flower beds, and then pour the human blood over the soil. She seemed to take great delight from this. That made people even more uneasy about it. But her garden continued to bloom, and so did her neighbors' unease. Number 3 is possession. One creepy neighbor encounter took place after the neighbor had passed away. The woman was named Mona and used to stand at her window staring out at the world, motionless like a gargoyle. When she passed away, her son asked someone if they could watch the house while they had her funeral, as there had been a number of break-ins recently. That's when her neighbor, Paras, agreed to help out. While she waited in Mona's home, she fixed herself a snack and sat on a big old armchair in front of the television holding the remote. There was when the power cut and, frightened, Paras phoned her dad to come over. He was unsettled by what he saw because Paras was sitting in the chair Mona had died in, remote in hand, acting like her at the same time they were lowering Mona's body into her grave. Number 2 is The Watcher. A man named Peter shared his frightening experience with a neighbor online. He wrote in detail about how his neighbor seemed unstable. The man would walk around the outside of his house during the day, staring at it from different angles. He also spent an unusual amount of time staring at his garage and car. At 4 a.m. in the morning, the man would be outside in his yard, checking his car over and staring at the street. Sometimes he would rush out of his home wearing sunglasses and carrying an old brown suitcase, as if going on a trip, only to reappear moments later. But most frightening of all to Pete was that the man would watch him through the gap in his front door whenever Pete would return home from a night out. The neighbor still lives there and each night continues to watch. And number 1 is The Hopeless Romantic. Lexi was asked out on a date by her neighbor, to which she agreed, but she ended the romance after realizing that he seemed strange. 2 weeks later, the neighbor left a bottle of women's gummy vitamins on her doorstep. When she would walk from her house to her car, Lexi would receive a text from him watching her, telling her that she was beautiful. After that, he left flowers and a handwritten creepy poem. Frightened, Lexi put a sign on her door, telling the neighbor that if he approached the house, she would phone the police. Angered, the neighbor tried to force his way into Lexi's home. After a restraining order, he bought Lexi a ticket to go to a concert with him. Thankfully, the neighbor had to flee the state due to an unrelated crime. If he hadn't, Lexi had no idea what would have came next.